Hi, welcome back to Scholastically Natalie. Um, Again, if you like D&D, writing, books, anything along that sorts, feel free to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Today we're going to continue with Let's Roll and the topic of catering to players, and I'm going to talk about an in-depth look with a certain character that I had named Tharmala and discuss the decisions that I made as a DM and kind of the rationale behind them. So, really the biggest part that I did with Tharmala was that she had very specific requests that she wanted to accomplish or gain. First one was a nice shield, the next one was writing about the party's adventures, and then ultimately her end goal for the campaign was becoming an angel of her goddess. So, Tharmala was a cleric of the goddess of healing, who I named Sartiana because I had a, original pantheon, and she chose the backstory of amnesia, which let me had a lot of fun. And her basic premise was that she had ended up running away from the army that she had been a part of, and that they were now pursuing her for an unknown reason. So, the first time that she was like, hey, I'd really like this one thing, is that I think she said she wanted a +1 shield or a nice shield or something along those lines. And, I did make her wait probably a couple months to get it. And eventually she did find it in the home of an NPC after they had what counts for them as a successful interaction with them, which was they got information and then murdered them. And then her second desire was that she wanted to have her character tell stories of the party's adventures. She wanted to have been doing this for a while, already, and so I was like, yeah, sure, your character can be an author with a relatively good following, yeah, that's fine. Because for me it was a relatively harmless thing, at most they might receive some pushback on it, their names are going to be out there. I didn't really have a ton of time to get into that because they were already getting into their own idiocies, and they honestly didn't need me supplying any additional ones. And second part was that it did actually give the party a nice supplementary income, because they oftentimes were not taking quests or, doing things that would actually pay them. And for her part, it did really emphasize her characterization. She was required to, you know, sending the publisher a lot. She had to keep track of how often she was sending things. We kept a list of which adventures she was talking about, which things she wasn't going to submit, and it really just gave her a feeling of doing something even when she wasn't actively doing something. It was kind of a program running in the background of our game that we both knew was going on and nobody else was paying attention to. So it just made her feel better about her character and what her character was doing. So, her third desire was to become an angel of her goddess, which, probably isn't something you're going to want to let your players do if it's not towards the end of your campaign. And she did decide halfway through last year of her campaign that she did, in fact, want to become an angel, and that was her new goal. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds doable. And so I did decide to give her some vindication and let that happen in the very final session of the campaign. As I like to do with my characters, I generally get some pre-consent to murder them. At the very least, even without saying, hey, you're going to get a reward for it, I would like to tell them, hi, there is a high possibility you are going to die during this fight, because a lot of the people that I have run for, or at least played with, are pretty attached to their characters most of the time. And as much as I love having them being very angry and resentful about their characters dying, I'd rather not have that strain on my life. But I was like, hey, you are gonna die for a bit, so make a backup character. And she did agree to that, mostly because I did tell her, hey, you're gonna get what you want out of this eventually, you're just gonna have to work with me. So for her, I did in fact make a personalized angel homebrew. I looked through different David traits and different blessing traits and kind of put them all together and basically handed them to her during the final minutes of the fight because they spent a good portion of time killing Fraz Blue during that fight. A stupidly large amount of time killing Fraz Blue. And it was more difficult than I expected to ultimately murder her to get her to turn into an angel, because of course the rest of the party didn't know that I was planning on murdering her. So I did actually want to discuss the homebrew. I can place it, I don't know if I've released it yet or not on my Instagram or Tumblr, so I'll make sure to try to remember to do that. But what I wanted to do is give her a good buff. Like, essentially, if you want to use this for a player, you definitely need to kind of make sure that they're players who won't abuse the heck out of it, or, debuff it a bit. So, for my David traits, I said that a player who has recently awoken or been transformed into an angel can choose between 2 blessings from their deity. Angelic weapons, where their weapon attacks are magical and deal an extra 2d8 radiant damage, or healing touch, where the target gains 2d8 hit points and is free of poison, blindness, or deafness, and you use that as many times as your wisdom or charisma mod. And then so for an angelic blessings, I gave them some innate spellcasting like Davis get in the book. So at will they got detect evil and good, and then once per day she can have divination. And then for angelic resistance, I gave them resistance against radiant damage, which honestly isn't a very common damage, so it should be relatively okay. And then so for celestial, I have that the creature type becomes celestial for the purpose of spells and effects. And then when you are killed or when you take action against your deity or their cause, you can immediately be returned to them because my gods live on another plane. So your deity can either destroy you or basically let you come to life on this plane at one of their temples. Additionally, because we all know angels have to have wings, you have celestial wings. You have a pair of feathered wings in the colors of your deity. They grant you a flying speed of 30 feet. These wings are an extension of your celestial soul, and as such can be made incorporeal. And can be made invisible in most senses at will. I need to retype that paragraph. Sorry, I'm reading it again, and I don't need "and as such" twice in there. While your wings are a sight to behold, they are not as magnificent or as grand as other established celestials. If you are wearing armor you are not proficient in, you cannot fly. Basically, I'm trying to say you're going to get some small wings compared to regular angels. And next, communion. Angels do not need to sleep. Instead, they enter a state of prayer, remaining semi-conscious for 4 hours a day. Essentially, you just get the elf rest. And then immortal. When you die, you return to the outer plane of your deity, leaving no body behind. You can still be subject to the Raise Dead, Resurrection, or Wish spell when someone appeals to your deity for your return. Yeah, I really do need to resave these. I didn't proofread this, and it shows. But I honestly, I don't often ask for feedback on Homebrew, and I don't really post it anywhere else because I'm a mildly sensitive soul. But if you have watched this and you do have any interesting comments or feedback on this Homebrew, if you have a good way to improve it for people so that it can scale with them as they level up, or so that it can be for players who aren't reaching level 17, something along those lines, that would be honestly awesome, because my players were all hitting 17 or 18 by the time they were getting these power-ups. I hope you yourself maybe have some sort of insight as to how you have accommodated players. I would have ultimately started giving her slower transitions to becoming a Deva if our campaign had continued for longer, because I think that would be a fun thing to do. Just every other level up, hand her a piece of paper that says, hey, you can do this thing now. I would have enjoyed that. That would have been my ultimate plan, so that they end up becoming this sheet of Homebrew by the end of the campaign. You can't see me, but I'm gesturing at it. So, again, if you have any good insights onto improving the Homebrew, any additional grammar errors you have spotted while we're doing this, I appreciate any and all feedback, your own issues with catering to players, because it can certainly be a struggle. thanks for watching. I hope you have seen something here that you like or can use in the future. If you are looking for me on Instagram or Tumblr, you can find me at Horde of a Dice Dragon. If you're looking for me at Twitter, I am Scholastically Natalie. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give it a like, and if you are interested in hearing more from me, feel free to give me a subscribe. Thanks for watching. Scholastically Natalie.